I think the market is really ready for prompt engineering. Like, our clients aren't coming to us looking for help in building AI. They have a problem. They have the problem yesterday. It was, research took a long time and it was expensive. They know that they give the researcher a thing and they get a report at the end. That process is well defined in and out. Clients are just wanting to buy AI with a click. They don't want to have to tell us how to do the job. They want the AI to simply do the job for them.
Hello and welcome to In the Blink of AI, where I talk to the brightest AI startups and innovators each week. I'm Georgie Healy, and this week I am speaking to Brendan Cervin, CTO at IDEALI. IDEALI are a consumer insights platform, and their 115 customers, probably more at this point, are the who's who of ANZ corporates. Forbes recently called them a game changer for brands wanting to iterate ideas within 24 hours, and they just announced their 5.5 million seed round with OIF and ICE Ventures. Today we talk about everything from using AI to give next level insights about customer behaviours, to the technology products that give people the creeps like, Google Glass. Huge thank you to Brendan for coming on the show. Let's jump into the episode. Hi Brendan, thank you so much for joining In the Blink of AI. I would love to start us off by you telling me about IDEALI.
Sure. IDEALI is 1 year old. We're formed from a venture studio and we're a consumer research platform delivering overnight results. We're taking the process that researchers would normally do, doing that with AI and sort of taking what would be 3 weeks of research and turning it into overnight. So it's pretty disruptive technology. So we go out to 400 demographically representative consumers overnight. We're asking them what they like or dislike about a product that a client is testing, or it could be a marketing message. These companies include ASB, Telstra, Dentsu, Ogilvy, Tegel, Asahi, sort of corporate enterprise type organizations that are selling to consumers as a whole. And we're covering New Zealand, Australia, and America at the moment.
Yeah, I do note the New Zealand accent. Very excited to have a New Zealander on the show. You're the CTO, Brendan. You're the best person to ask. What's the decision behind needing AI to create this solution for your customers?
I wish I had the genesis of the idea myself, but I've been given the keys to it. The venture studio that formed IDEALI is from two organizations called Previously Unavailable and TRA, who are both innovation and research studios. So they've been, doing research with clients for 20 years, and they've effectively turned their process into AI. So that's really the unlock, is they've identified a process that they've been performing for decades, and with AI's advent, they've just sort of productized it.
Amazing. And you use AI to create consumer insights. What were people doing before they used AI to, how did they get those insights before?
Well, ordinarily a researcher, so we have a number of researchers on our team, ordinarily a researcher would be responsible for generating the insights from the research that's performed. So that involves reading through all the information that's returned by the consumers, analyzing it, doing some regression analysis, some categorization and theming, and then ultimately coming up with some top-line insights that the management is looking to make a decision on. So this is all, a traditional process that's been done either in-house by large organizations with research capability, or often outsourced to agencies for research as well.
Yeah, okay. I read an article in Forbes. You guys have been all over the media recently. In that report, it said that 25 to 75% of sales comes from recently released products and services. So if your companies don't use consumer insights, what would happen if they didn't?
I think within an organization that doesn't have research, there can be a battle of opinions. The highest paid opinion can win in some situations. It can be that ideas are watered down by groupthink. The essence of an idea could be shaved off, and the whole opportunity of that idea could be missed just by the watering down of the edges of ideas as they go through organizations. And so ideas can languish as well. They might not be adopted by those around them, and with a little bit of evidence behind them, they can build momentum and actually make it through the organization. So there's lots of reasons why ideas can be stifled without research, and we see its ability to be used more regularly. Overnight you can take that idea. We've had clients talk about, they've taken the idea from the back pocket or the top shelf of the desk and just run it through the system, and the next day they've got real insights that the rest of the company is excited about and can see the opportunity of the idea. So this is really just increasing the accessibility to the research as well. The research component is done by our system, and you can just bring your problem. You don't need to be a researcher. We've got the methodology. You get the insights at the end, but you don't actually have to be the researcher or the expert to get it done.
Yeah, which sounds fantastic, especially when, it doesn't come naturally to some people, but they still want to leverage that information, I'm sure. We have rapid fire questions at the end, but I can't help but ask a cheeky question up front. What's a major product release that a company has done that you can remember or think of that probably could have been avoided if they had done some consumer insights and research behind it first? I can think of a few if you need some time.
This is I was stuck on this one actually. I must have.
Well, the one that comes to mind that continuously haunts me based on where I work now is Google Glass. So, and even a lot of the VR products, right? Apparently a lot of nausea and things like that, even if it sounds like a great idea, even if from a technologically interesting perspective, we could release this innovative technology, for the actual consumer, for the actual wearer, not a great experience.
Yeah, I think that there's a mismatch between sort of society's expectations of privacy and what this device allows people to do. And so it just gives people the creeps, and rightly so. So there's some things that look good on paper, but, for reasons that aren't apparent, are just not good for society. I completely agree with that one.
I have to ask you then, Meta's teamed up with Ray-Ban, and this is one of the more recent launches, and they've got actually quite flattering looking sunglasses, but they take photos. How do you feel about that?
I don't know. I think people are technology always moves faster than society. So, if they look good and people start wearing them, we'll figure it out as we go. Regulations tend to come a bit slower than technology, but people will decide with their wallet, I guess.
Well, I do appreciate you jumping with me off piece there for a moment. Let's dive back into building AI products. So with the AI tech that you guys use, as you gather customer data, am I correct is this sentiment data? And if so, can you explain what that is?
Sentiment is part of it. Sentiment is a traditional analysis that, AI companies may have done on, consumer feedback to look at whether or not they're positive or negative. We do more of a sort of categorization method where we, everyone who talks about the recycling packaging is grouped together. And then we're also asking how much they like a product or how unique a product is. So we perform a regression analysis to figure out, of the people who talk about recycling, were they positive? Is this impacting the product positively, or was it some aspect that was holding the product back? And so we're using multiple sort of questions to draw that analysis together rather than just sort of a sentiment from a single question.
Interesting. And why have we moved on from sentiment data? Is it just not as robust as it could be?
I think when you're just analyzing the text, it's valuable and useful, and the system is analyzing sentiment in a similar way to what it used to, but it's centering it on other questions, where they're asking for a definitive answer of how much you like this thing, so that we can sort of position the themes, and it's more tangible, it's more granular than sentiment analysis.
On the clustering, what kinds of data is the most meaningful? What would you be looking for as a business that would really help you with decision making more than other kinds of data?
Most companies will include a profiling question to identify whether the client is in a high buying group or a low buying group. And then within the high buying group, they might be looking for a particular demographic they're trying to reach. So they'll be looking for the performance of the product for that specific demographic. So they might be looking for, women, professional women, for example. So they'll be filtering by that, and they'll often see that the product, because it's targeted at that audience, has a higher performance against the average of the consumers. So they'll be looking for potentially indicators from demographics that are particularly interested.
Amazing. Does a company ever pivot based on the data? Like, we thought we were targeting millennials, but actually it's boomers that are really resonating.
They certainly have acted on the consumer feedback. There's been a number of projects that have pivoted in various ways, whether it's the product itself or the messaging that's adjusted. I think more often the product changes rather than the audience that targeting changes. But yeah, it's the whole point.
Yeah, exactly. And then zooming out a little bit from there, I'm learning about the AI space. The listeners are hoping to hopefully get educated in the AI space. What you do a form of NLP or natural language processing, and perhaps you could kind of explain the context for all of us a little bit more.
Ever since ChatGPT was released and sort of popularized, a lot of the previous AI technologies, like NLP, have kind of been redundant. AI is this pocket knife, this universal tool now. So all of the language analysis is just AI, Gen AI now. And I treat it as like you're just giving an instruction to someone. So if you wanted to do a sentiment analysis, you can instruct a person to perform a sentiment analysis in the same way you can instruct the AI. So but there's a lot more flexibility. So we're using AI for all sorts of specific purposes within the research area that sort of replace previous methodologies like NLP.
And only sharing what is publicly available knowledge. How do you do that? How do you leverage multiple different existing models, or how does that work?
I mean, I'm sure that everyone's building their own AI stacks in slightly different ways nowadays, and I think that there's a lot of difference in how you build it. They've got your low-level language frameworks like LangChain or Semantic Kernel, and then you've got all your AI providers that can be wired up. We use OpenAI because it's ranked the highest in terms of its intelligence, and we'll switch to whoever has the most intelligent. But the problem I think that the technology creates is it puts the person who knows what is good AI output far away from the code. The engineers are writing the prompts effectively that the AI is then answering, but the person who knows the best prompt is the researcher who's written 1,000 research documents before. So we've been trying to build our stack so that the researcher controls the prompt. There's no pollution or modification to the prompts that they work on in the production environment. So they get a like for like in terms of what they're trying to get as an outcome. And we're trying to remove the engineer from the actual prompt process so that they have no responsibility for how the prompts are structured.
So this is fascinating to me. As an AI startup and as the CTO or founder, I didn't know that you could essentially, you said OpenAI is the most sophisticated currently, the best model that exists currently, but you would switch if you had to. Are the switching costs quite low in this industry? I would have thought that you'd have to, completely re-educate yourself.
No.
I think
the switching costs are low. Like they're simply an AI as a service. Developers are already building frameworks to aggregate the service, so you can just plug in anything you want. It's not, if you want to switch service, you might just need to sign up and count and switch over the APIs. And there is some complexity in the details, but I don't think the complexity is enough of a barrier to switch. There's certain features people are trying to build, like OpenAI is trying to build, that created a little bit of vendor lock-in, but everyone's building these features and the vendor lock-in won't last long.
Wow, that is fascinating. And no wonder the tech companies are all racing, because if the switching costs are low, you're only as good as your last release, right? Okay, a recent post on your LinkedIn, you said that synthetic data in the context of generative AI was almost your favorite subject. So I have good news. I've got some questions about synthetic data. How is synthetic data built or made?
This is a great question. Because I've been discussing this last week with some other sort of AI specialists. And they were lamenting the sort of previous generation of AI synthetic data, which was based on models where you'd put in some values and you'd get a predictable result at the other end of this model. And you could look at the model and you could scientifically validate the output of that model, and you knew why it was making the decisions that it was making. And this might be forecasting sales figures or something like that. But invariably, the model had scientific research that backed it. And it's a formula or whatever it was. With generative AI, you're just talking to a chatbot, right? So if you say to it, imagine that you are, a university student in this city at this university doing this course, and we want to talk to you about your experience. Everything that AI outputs is synthetic data. And it's only just, the line between what generative AI puts out as synthetic data and what doesn't is just the label that we choose to put on it. There's no scientific background to say that the synthetic data that generative AI outputs is correct or accurate. I think there's a gap in the industry at the moment where anyone who's doing synthetic data, you have to trust the business and its process to generate the synthetic data, and as a consumer, like the output of the synthetic data? Is it telling you something new and novel? Or is it reaffirming your assumptions? But in either way, like the expectations of historical synthetic data and new Gen AI, or that the research behind synthetic data now just doesn't exist.
Wow.
Well, I haven't seen a lot of it. I think it's a problem for the industry.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Say, because the categorization, the tagging of synthetic versus not synthetic is, choose your own adventure. You're only really hurting yourself if you call something human data if it's not, right? Like that would only hurt you.
However you're getting the synthetic data, I'm specifically I should probably cap, these are my thoughts around consumer market research synthetic data, not other types of generative AI synthetic data. So when you're asking it to emulate consumer behavior, you're really looking for, can it tell you with some degree of accuracy what number of people in Sydney like to have ice cream at the beach versus at the cinema? And like that's data you could go out to the market and ask, and it's data that you could get synthetic data. You could use synthetic data to answer it. We don't know how accurate it is, and there is no specific process to answer it that is well documented and understood and scientifically backed. Every company who tries to answer that question is going to answer it in a different way.
It almost feels a little bit dangerous. It reminds me of scientific discovery. If something's been discovered, how often do people go back and repeat the study? It's like, it's already been proven or disproven or whatever. Actually, it hasn't been disproven because no one's gone off to disprove it. So is it dangerous to kind of have synthetic data at all almost?
So I think that there are practical applications for synthetic data in consumer research. And I think it comes down to the question you're asking and maybe the importance of the question you're asking as well to a degree. Because there is real cost in asking people to give you their time and feedback. So let's say you're asking this university student what their favorite soft drink is. You're asking them what they think of a new soft drink product, and you're asking to describe how unique this product is in the market that they live within. How does it compare to Coke and Pepsi or whatever? If you were to ask synthetic data to do that, and you were to pick, any of the products that exist in the world, that student lives in Sydney. He sees certain advertisements about certain products, his shop stocks certain products. Every city has different products. Every person's going to see different advertising. I don't believe that the AI is going to have the capability of telling a business how unique a product is in the market when it doesn't live in the real world. But if you were to ask the AI, when do you like to eat ice cream? What are the occasions you like to eat ice cream? This is one of the very interesting questions that marketers ask is, when do you do this thing with your product? And the AI is going to canvas all the potential things, and you don't really care about exact accuracy, but you do want to know where things are leaning and what the spread is. I think AI will always give you a good range of answers. The accuracy may not be good, but you're looking for the range when you're asking that question. Like, I might think of 3 good occasions for ice cream, but in reality, there's probably 15. The AI will find that 15 for you, and the top 5 will be the top 5.
This fascinates me, this kind of prompt engineering topic. And I've listened to a few podcasts about people that are, building the models. And from what I hear, the models will trip over themselves to give you an answer. That is how they're built, is to give you an answer even if it's incorrect. Brendan, do you think that you need to educate even your customers in how to prompt the models in order to, ensure that they're asking the right question, like how you explained?
I'm going to segue a little bit. I don't think the market is really ready for prompt engineering. Like, our clients aren't coming to us looking for help in building AI. They're looking. They have a problem. They have the problem yesterday. It was, research took a long time and it was expensive. They know that they give the researcher a thing and they get a report at the end. That process is well defined in and out. Clients are just wanting to buy AI with a click. They don't want to have to tell us how to do the job. They want the AI to simply do the job for them. So there isn't a lot of interaction. The clients expect us to know how to do it. They don't want to have to help us to do it. And so all the AI that you're seeing adopted in businesses, it's a case of, if I get the same output using this AI as I did from another process, then I will use that AI because it is 1,000 times faster. And so, but it's easy to buy products when they're a like-for-like comparison to what maybe the client's used to. If the AI is doing something new and novel, then it's a bit harder to evaluate whether or not it's useful. And I think that the barrier to buying a product when you just have to click is so much lower versus the investment of knowing how to prompt or use a complex tool. Clients are just, I think it's an adoption phase. 3 years time, it could be that AI just runs everything and there's a general, there's one AI that rules your life. But for a few years, I think there's going to be thousands of AIs solving specific problems in different businesses.
Yeah. And thank you. That is a great point. If I wanted to learn how to use a new tool, I probably wouldn't be paying that much money for someone to come and consult me on the matter.
But people are a bit lazy.
Even with image, right? Like I've used certain text to image models and it's like, oh no, you need to do layers and layers before you can even get anything close to something in reality. And I'm like, oh, well, never mind.
There's an art to prompting. But I think there's also IP to prompting, like being a business that solves a problem well. I've been challenging our researchers to sort of treat the AI as like a place where we keep 1,000 questions that a researcher would want to ask about research. And the AI can ask that question to every test and it never misses anything. And it's doing a better job than a human because it's a sum of human capability and knowledge. All the researchers are just throwing their questions in. And if the AI can give a relevant response, then it gets highlighted to the user.
Amazing. What's the perfect blend of synthetic versus natural occurring events when it comes to your consumer-specific audience?
We don't do any synthetic yet.
You don't do any?
No, we don't. But I have been building in previous organizations. I think that we're evaluating how we will bring synthetic data into our product. We're concerned around confusion it may create for our clients. They come to us today for real consumer research. It's got AI on the side, and we already field questions about synthetic data. We don't want necessarily for people to misunderstand the value of the product we're producing.
I have to request feedback almost daily in my day-to-day job, and it is really hard. People don't want to give feedback. People don't want to do surveys. How do you approach this?
So we actually outsource the sort of consumer finding process. So there's a number of international companies with hundreds of millions of consumers that they reward with money based on the amount of time they spend.
That's what I'm not doing. I'm not paying them. Oh, it's so obvious now.
Yes. So we have a third party that provides that for us, and they have a massive business trying to incentivize people and find people that can be available to complete their surveys, and it can take hours to find these people. So that's why, that's probably the slowest part of our research process at the moment, is just the time it takes to get hundreds of people to complete the survey.
You've really articulated clearly how you gather the data and the kinds of natural data that you're gathering for IDEALI, but then how do you give that back to the customer? How do you provide it?
We're effectively returning a report, which is a mixture of graphs and executive summaries, but with interactive filtering so that you can go down to your demographics. We've got dozens of summaries within the reports, trying to answer specific questions about the data that's particular pieces of data within the report. So there'll be an AI summary that looks specifically at demographics and identifies the key demographics and the low performing demographics. And there'll be another AI that specifically looks at what themes were positive or negative. And there'll be another one that will be comparing products to each other, and another one that's talking about the profile groups of the buyers. So there's a structured process to the research, and there's a structured process to the AI that we're producing at the end as well.
I find it so, I used to be a consultant, and the firms I work for are the huge lists of customers you have now. And I know they have data engineers there, and I know that they have marketing professionals there. And how come you guys reached product market fit within a year, despite their huge teams that I would have assumed were doing exactly what you're offering?
OpenAI released ChatGPT how long ago now? 3 years ago. I was fortunate enough to be in a company that was using OpenAI at the time. But I think, the industry is still waking up to the technology. I think that working with consumers creates its own complexity around, pricing and monetization, and it's an expensive process. So I think that there's, it's not a simple SaaS product that traditional SaaS geeks maybe are drawn to, because you've got to, you're in a sort of market where you're paying for consumers, and it's a bit messier than a traditional SaaS business. So I think that there's I think that the whole sort of market of customer research is a little bit underserved because of the messiness.
And who within the companies do you provide this data to? Is it the C-suite? Is it like which business professionals do you work with most closely?
Sort of the marketing and innovation departments generally is sort of the main ones, and within that, you could be a product specialist who's working on FMCG supermarket products, or you could be a marketing manager doing an out-of-home campaign for a services business. So from that sort of more marketing based to the innovation based and everyone in between and up to the C-suite, we've seen clients sort of, one particular client said, we spend X hundreds of thousands of dollars on consumer research per year. So we'll try IDEALI for a year with a portion of that, and I'll consider it a success when all the research has been consumed, because they believe that everyone should be doing more research.
Yeah. One company that comes to mind is Woolworths, with the amount of, I don't know behind the scenes, but it does appear that they've got considerable amount of spend towards their marketing and also their platform and their data that they're gathering. And, even they've got their marketplace within the Woolworths app now. They're clearly trying to gather data to see if they should compete with the Amazon or the like. I'm not sure if you have any comments on that, or if you can think of anyone.
The supermarket industry is an interesting space because obviously lots of suppliers sell to the supermarkets. And the supermarkets, they monetize the data that they have internally. The price lists are sold back to the suppliers. So if you want to understand how much something's selling for, you have to pay the supermarket. So the supermarkets aren't just a company in the industry, aren't just a particular client in the industry. They're actually a whole area of complexity into themselves. The depth of data around purchasing that they hold is valuable to the whole country. So, but yeah, many of our clients are researching products before they hit the shelves, and even going to the supermarkets and providing our research as evidence to the supermarkets as to why the supermarket should in fact list the item. So they might be saying it serves a new demographic, or it performs better than a competitor, or it might be they're going to an overseas market they've been sold to before. Clients, for example, testing wines and then going up and getting them at Tesco's up in the UK. So the supermarkets are definitely part of our industry, and we're more common. It's more common for our clients to be testing products and then communicating them to the supermarkets than for the supermarkets themselves to be testing on our platform. Although I'm sure they will one day.
Yeah. I have a friend that works for one of the suppliers, big beverage supplier, and it's just fascinating to hear even the data that gets used about geographies in Sydney, where diet versions versus the full sugar versions, and based on location and all of that stuff. It's fascinating.
Yeah, I'm sure they have so much data that we're analysing it to death.
Yeah. Okay. So switching track a little bit, you guys recently raised $5.5 million from very prestigious VCs. Congratulations. How much of that funding for an AI startup has to go towards compute, or is it very much the same as any other startup where it's going towards hiring and growth and international expansion and things like that?
Yeah, no, there's no
magic number.
There's no massive cost associated to AI. I think it's different for every business in terms of how their solution works and how AI intensive it is. Our solution is consumer intensive. We've got time from people. That's the real cost of doing research compared to AI, which is comparatively low. Yeah, I'd say that, our AI costs are actually in the development of the application rather than the running of it.
And what would be your goal for the product this time next year? If I was to get you back on the show, what would you hope that IDEALI is looking like from a product standpoint at that stage?
I've got some pretty crazy ideas. I'm not sure if any of them will actually land on the roadmap.
I'd love to hear them. It's not AGI, is it, Brendan? Because, that is a bit ambitious.
No, but I think that AI should be able to understand any survey that someone's done historically. So why not, plug into any historical survey and produce a report that a researcher would produce? And that means that it needs to understand the correlation between all the questions in the survey and dynamically build out a methodology to answer the survey without ever being told what the survey was about, just by reading the survey itself. What I'd like to know in a year's time is that all of our customers are happy with the product. The numbers in the business, but I think that the hearing from customers and monitoring all the feedback the company gets from customers, be that across the sales, support, whatever it is, just a finger on the pulse. Are customers happy with this? Is the product market fit continuing in the way we expect? I think that just having happy customers in a year time is not an easy thing to do, and that's what will make me happy.
What's one core metric you might be looking for that would dictate success?
ARR is what SaaS businesses run on, but I think customer happiness is my key metric.
Amazing. And technically, as CTO, what's something that's really challenging about building a product like this, and what are you and the team really focused on at the moment?
I find it exciting and refreshing. Having built SaaS businesses for 15 years, the technology that we use to build the SaaS businesses has evolved drastically over that time. And having the opportunity to start a new business today is like building with all of the opportunities that technology has today without any of the legacy decisions that businesses are burdened with. So it's greenfields, the engineers having a great time, it's highly productive. The problems are all, easier problems to solve today than they've ever been to solve. So it's a highly productive and rewarding time.
I can clearly see you're super passionate, especially on LinkedIn and the socials, and I do recommend people check out the articles you've written. So the investor Robbie Paul, CEO of Icehouse Ventures, who participated in your recent round, said of you guys that your growth was really incredible. He said of the 150 plus software companies we've funded, the average time to 1 million in revenue is 4 years, and 5 million takes close to 6 years. IDEALI passed the 1 million mark in half the average time and is on track to hit 5 million just as rapidly. Don't be shy.
It's a very complicated math problem he gave us to do in our head when you described it that way. And I don't think the maths. I think, half the time is 2.5 years, but we reached 1 million in a few months. So yeah, we were several million at the end of our first year. And so, yeah, it has been a great first year.
Did you expect it when you were going into it? You've been CTO a number of times. Clearly, you have some...
It's always gamble.
Some things you can identify at this stage.
Yeah, I think I'm getting better at picking them. I don't know. There was a whole raft of decisions that went into the opportunity. I think IDEALI is definitely, in the same way that there was a revolution for the cloud era and then the mobile era, AI is a new revolution, and having an AI first startup, I think, is you probably couldn't have done it 3 years ago, or it's just the right time.
Yeah, perfect market timing to be a CTO. Congratulations, Brendan. We've reached my favorite part of the show, the rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Sure.
What's the best thing about being a startup in New Zealand?
I think it's just the fact that it's New Zealand and we don't have to deal with the rest of the world. There's a simplicity to living in New Zealand. There's great talent in the industry locally. Companies are, growing experience and growing the skilled number of people in the industry. So there's definitely a critical mass in New Zealand, but at the same time, you're not living in Europe or America, where the world seems a little bit crazier.
Yeah, you guys definitely, outperform per capita, I feel like, in terms of startup success stories. So there's something in the water over there, isn't there?
It's easier to ship software overseas than it is to ship anything else. So I think that there's an attraction for us to, because we're remote and because software has this attraction, it has a natural affinity, I think.
What's the worst thing about being a startup in New Zealand?
Oh, time zones to clients overseas. Easy.
What's your worst client time zone possible?
UK.
Really?
It's whole opposite.
I lived in London for a few years, and my friends that still live there, I find I just don't respond to their messages by accident because I'll read it either in the middle of the night and think, I'll respond later, or I get it, as I'm half asleep in the morning and I think I'll do it after daycare drop off or after lunchtime, and it just never happens. It's terrible.
It can definitely be disruptive. It's hard to manage.
Now, in your opinion, you're an OpenAI fan, clearly. Will ChatGPT 5, which is at point of this episode rumored to be released in December, be a success or a flop, Brendan?
I think they won't release anything but a success. If it's not a success, it won't be released. Like they know that they've got to outperform the market and all the existing models there. But they're making improvements to their architecture in a way that improves AI output, which is more than just building new models, like the way that they're doing reasoning with chain of thought and the O1 preview. It's not necessarily all about a massive new model. It's just about the architecture that they're putting around the models, which is drastically improving the output. So, new model or no new model, they're making improvements all the time, which we just passively benefit from.
You don't think they're under pressure to do a new release, seeing it's been a little while now, or
pressure from the fanboys?
Are you a fanboy?
I don't know what problem today can't be solved by the AI that we have that will be solved by the AI tomorrow. I think that we're just in the early adoption phase and people just haven't tried to solve the problems yet. The AI that was working today is incredibly capable. There's 100 more use cases that haven't been applied to it. So, I don't think that the performance of the AI is what's holding back the industry at the moment.
Agree. I feel like it's going super fast already, and I would like it to slow down just a little so we can all catch up.
Yeah, this is fine, guys. You take the foot off the brake a little bit.
A little bit, right? Now, I counted on LinkedIn 5 times minimum you've been CTO. What makes a great CTO?
I think CTOs are generalists. I try not to prescribe a process or decisions. I think that engineers like to live in a meritocracy, which is great 90% of the time, and then you have to play ref in a few occasions to just sort of, everyone's passionate about decisions in engineering, and sometimes there's just a coin toss as to which way to go. So I'm always asking questions about the process that's being followed. I try to hire people who are experts in the area and go deeper into the problems that I have time to do. A focus on a process is often better than just the decisions. And even the process itself is something which the team should take over and control. So they should be evolving it every 6 months. In the startup, the process you had 6 months ago will not work today.
Amazing. Which other AI CTO do you admire the most?
I think the person who's making the biggest impact at the moment is Jensen Huang, who's the NVIDIA CEO technically, but he's a technical person by trade, I think.
Why do you admire him? Yeah.
I think that aside from all the software AI improvements that OpenAI has been leading in, the way that transformers, the underlying technology has been adopted across all sorts of AI implementations, but they're all reliant on processing, and NVIDIA has been releasing, I've heard, the next chips and the performance they're expecting from them, and the fact that the next chips are purely designed by AI themselves. The first time I think that they've said that their chip is 100% AI, and it's like a ridiculous improvement in performance. And so the chip industry is going through its own boom at the moment, aside from the software boom that's happening with AI, and that's going to lift all boats. Every AI application in the world is going to benefit from 100x performance from the chips that are coming out in the short term. And then, text AI is just one small discipline of AI. There's all these other ones out there that NVIDIA's getting involved with around, training of robots and in 3D environments and vision AI. There's a lot of AI going on at the moment.
You've ended on such an exciting, fun note, and I love having a CTO of an AI startup on the show so that we can dive into, frankly, waters that are a little deep for me, but I find them really fascinating. This is how me and I'm sure the listeners learn the most. So thank you so much, Brendan. To finish us off, what would you like to shout out to anyone that might want to know a little bit more about IDEALI?
If you're tired of slow research, then come and talk to IDEALI today. It's that simple.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it, Georgie.
Thank you for listening to In the Blink of AI. You can check out the show notes for anything discussed in this week's episode, and we will be back next week. This podcast was produced by Day One, with music by Dan Hansen and visual artwork by Sophie Tyrell. If you loved the episode, please tell your mates. And I love AI news. Please share your thoughts and suggestions to georginarosehealy@gmail.com.